Hello again, my name is Rodney Reynolds, and this is yet another video review. Today I will be looking at the Abit KG7-RAID Motherboard. The Abit KG7-RAID Motherboard. If you look over here, of course, the standard things that come with most motherboards. You have the software, the drivers, the manual, the cables for the floppy, for your other CD-ROMs and for your other hard drives, and as well the connector here for 2 extra USB ports. Have a closer look here at the motherboard itself. Of course, this motherboard does support the new Athlon XP. I do have the Athlon XP 1900 Plus installed on this particular motherboard. Just remember to go to their website and download the latest version of the BIOS. As well, if you see next to the CPU here, you have the memory. You can have up to 4 sticks of memory right here. Of course, this is using the new DDR memory. I will be using the Crucial 2100 memory in this board. Also, you have right here, these are the 2 standard IDE connectors. Over here you have the RAID right here and the floppy right here. You have 1 AGP, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 PCI slots. As well, if we look on the back here, you have your keyboard, you have your mouse, you have 2 USB ports right here. Remember, you have this connector to have a total of 4 USB connectors on this motherboard. You have your parallel cable, your 2 COM ports, and this motherboard does not come with audio. The layout of this board is generally very good. You can see here around the CPU itself, it's quite a nice bit of space here to put almost any kind of cooler you want on this motherboard. And also, if you look at the way that the IDE ports are set up here, it's not that bad. However, I would like, and I do personally prefer, having all of these in one row, or at least all the IDEs together, instead of having some here, some there, and so on. So I would have liked to have seen all of these in one area all together. However, that's being very particular, and having these separate do sometimes cause issues with the lengths of cables. But it's still a layout preference, and I would prefer if again they were all in one place. If I can now go and show you some of the results and actually show you what the BIOS does look like and the overclocking features of this motherboard. Have a look here now at the BIOS itself. At the top, what's called a soft menu 3 setup. This is very unique to Abit motherboards. Certainly a very good feature to have if you're thinking about overclocking your particular CPU. Let's now go inside this option and have a look and see how you can do this. Right here you can see that I am actually using an Athlon XP 1900 Plus. You can see the other settings here with that setting. You have a multiplier of 12. The front side bus is at 133. And so on. And you can as well, of course, set the voltage. That's the core voltage, the V core voltage, which is on the CPU. You got your I/O voltage, which you can adjust, and of course you can adjust the DDR or the memory voltage as well. Now, if I was to go in here, I can actually manually override this and select other options. For instance, as you can see here, or you can just go to user defined. Then you can adjust the multiplier if you have your CPU unlocked, and then you can of course adjust the CPU front side bus memory, and you can enter a number here for anywhere from 1 to 200 megahertz. And of course you can adjust your V-core voltage. This is the CPU going all the way up to 1.85 volts. You can as well adjust the I/O voltage. You have 2 settings here, 3.5 or 3.65. And as well, you can adjust the memory voltage here all the way up to 3 volts. The standard CMOS features are very familiar to most people. This is where you set the time. You can set up your hard drives and so on in here. The advanced BIOS, of course, this is where you would set up your boot sequence if you want the virus warning enabled, and other things in here, the COM ports, the video shadow, and so on. And as well, the advanced chipset features. Now this is where you can tweak a few things like memory, and you can enable your system BIOS, your video BIOS, your AGP, whether you want it 2 times or 4 times, whether you want to have a latency of 2, or another option that you can select, 2.5, and you can either do with a manual override on the timing for the memory, or you can just do an automatic setting as well on this. Integrated peripherals, of course, this is very common to all kinds of motherboards here, showing the onboard IDE controller 1 and what's on that, as well as the IDE controller 2. If we continue here, this is the power management setup. Of course, you can set the system to shut down, power up at certain times. If the modem is active, you can power the system up, and so on and so forth in this particular area. And here you have the plug and play configuration. The last thing here in the BIOS that I will look at is the PC health status. Of course, in here you can see the current temperature of the CPU, the current motherboard temperature, the revolutions of whatever fans you have plugged into here. You can see the core voltage for your CPU and other voltages in here as well. Let me now go to SciSoft and show you some results I got from the memory and the CPU and the RAID configuration on this motherboard. I'm using the very latest version of SciSoft Sandra, the professional version. I'll be doing a few tests here. The first one being the CPU. Of course, this will be dependent on what CPU you actually use. I'm using an Athlon XP at 1900. That's 1.6 gigahertz. You can compare this. The result is 4325 MIPS compared to a Pentium 4 2 gigahertz at 3688 MIPS. We go on here to the CPU multimedia result, and as you can see here, it's quite fast as well. Top result 8474. You compare that to a Pentium 4 2 gigahertz 7875. So again, even faster than a Pentium 4. We go on here to the memory result. You can see here the DDR memory certainly does show through. Result of 1747 megabytes per second. If we compare that to the Intel Pentium 4 at 1.6 gigahertz, the Pentium 4 does outperform the DDR memory in this benchmark at 2189 megabytes per second. If we go on to and test the hard drive, of course, I have this at RAID 0 using the high point controller on this motherboard. I get a result which is faster than anything else on the list here. It's even faster than the spec which it's comparable to, which is the ATA 100 7200 RPMs. I am actually using 2 Maxer 20 gig ATA 100 7200 RPMs, getting a result here of 36702. Abit has done a fantastic job on this motherboard. 3 big pluses here. You have stability, very stable. Overclockability, well, as with most Abit motherboards, it's very, very overclockable. Of course, you have performance with this, the new DDR memory, and the RAID on board as well. How stable is this motherboard? Well, I have been using this motherboard for over 2 weeks on my main system. And on that system, I'm using an Athlon XP 1900. I have around 5 PCI cards, 1 AGP video card. I have a DVD player. I have a CD burner. You get the idea. I have a lot of stuff, and it's been fantastic in the stability department.